Hey guys, thanks for tuning in to another video on ForgottenWeapons.com. I'm Ian McCollum, and I'm here today at the Springfield Armory National Historic Site taking a look at some of the prototype US semi-auto rifles in their reference collection. And today we have the Bommarito. So if you're familiar with some of the early reference work on American semi-autos, I'm sure you've heard of this. This is neat because it is a toggle action rifle. It's not a Luger rifle, but it's the closest thing that I have until I get over to Germany and find the Luger semi-auto rifle, which does exist. Anyway, back in 1909, well, even before that, the United States military was very much interested in self-loading rifles, something to replace a bolt action. We didn't have one, and there was a little bit of sporadic experimentation in the early years of the 1900s, which culminated in 1909 with a formal Army basically memorandum explaining what they wanted in a semi-auto rifle and encouraging industry and private civilian inventors to tinker with this stuff and submit anything that you come up with to the Army because we'd love to test your new rifles. In fact, they actually supported this initiative by offering barrels, Springfield 1903 barrels, to inventors and companies, inventors, private and corporate, who were looking to develop semi-auto rifles. The barrels, by far the hardest thing for a garage gunsmith to make, especially barrels chambered for the current government military cartridge, which was 30-06. And so the government, like if you came and asked them, said, hey, I'm working on rifles, I need some barrels, they'd just give you some barrels. Support of local invention, that they don't really do that so much anymore. At any rate, this was one of the results. So this was developed by a guy named Giuseppe Bommarito. It was first tested by Springfield in 1916, and it's a toggle action rifle. So let's dive in and take a look at how it works. Sorry for the interruption, just want to say that today's video is brought to you by Headstamp Publishing, with an extensive catalog of books on all sorts of interesting and esoteric small arms, everything from World War II small arms to Imperial Japanese swords to the earliest of revolvers and Cold War battle rifles. There is something at Headstamp for every firearms enthusiast. Check it out, links in the description text below. Let's just start right at the toggle. When you fire, this thing's going to cycle up like that, all the way back to there. It has currently locked open on an empty magazine. This does have 20-round detachable magazines. And by the way, the action locks open on the magazine follower. So when I take the magazine out, the action's going to close. But that is Bommarito's magazine. Yes, when the US government did finally adopt its first semi-auto rifle, it was the M1 Garand, and it used clips and block clips. The government had reasons for clips at the time, which are debatable, but there was definitely experimentation early on with box magazines with guns like the Bommarito. Now, this is a short recoil action, and it has a travel of about 1.25 inches. So when you fire, the first thing that's going to happen is that the barrel is going to start to cycle backwards, like so, and the barrel and the whole receiver go backwards, and only after it reaches this point does it start to cam the toggle open. And the idea here is this gives the bullet time to leave the barrel, because this is going to start moving backward under recoil the moment the cartridge is fired. But because all of this has so much more mass than the bullet, it's going to accelerate much more slowly than the bullet, and we have enough time here, time delay, so that by the time the action unlocks right there and the toggle starts to open, gas pressure has dropped to a safe level in the barrel. Now, one interesting thing that Bommarito did is normally on recoil-operated rifles, like you can see some marks here where the barrel reciprocates. On this guy, this whole section that looks like the barrel doesn't move. That's because Bommarito actually bored this out so that the front sight is on a fixed element that doesn't move, and it's just this little bit of the barrel sticking out at the end that does. So that's the movement you get when it fires, and then the barrel continues to reciprocate inside what is now a barrel sleeve. And then it's going to cycle all the way open like that, kick the empty case out, load the next round in, like so. The magazine release is right there. No other controls to speak of here besides the trigger. There's no manual safety on it. And that's pretty much it for the outside. So let's go ahead and take this apart let's take a look at how it works. Go ahead and pull out the retaining screw on the nose cap. Slide that forward. Loosen up the barrel band. We can slide that forward. Then we can pull off the upper handguard. Put that aside. We've got 3 screws locking the action into the stock. One goes from the top here. Pull that guy out. And we've got 2 on the bottom. All right. Take those out. And we can take off the trigger guard. And there's a little screw, well, a spacer tube in there. Take that out. And now the stock will slide off of the action. There really is nothing particular going on with the stock. Basically, it's a copy of a 1903 stock, a little bit longer to fit all the mechanical stuff in the gun. And then the barrel on this rifle is only hand tight into the receiver, so I can actually unscrew the barrel, which will make it a lot easier to show you how it works. There we go. There's our barrel. There's our receiver in action. So you can see the spring here. This is the main spring of the gun because the barrel is connected to the receiver and the action. So this will cycle back under recoil and stretch the spring out. When it comes forward, it's going to pull the bolt forward into the locked position. All right, now the really interesting bit is the action here. Unfortunately, this pin doesn't want to come out. And this is a very old, one-of-a-kind unique prototype, so I don't want to hammer on it. Normally, the disassembly would be remove this cross pin, and then the toggle comes out, and then the upper element of the receiver goes off the front and separates from the bottom. But I can't do that, but I can show you, I think, pretty well what's going on in here. So this is just a buffer spring to soften the end of travel. The way Bommarito did this was by putting a round, a spherical surface at the end of his toggle. So when you fire the rifle, the action is all the way forward, and hopefully you can see down in there, there's an oval-shaped cutout that the end of the toggle rides in. So as the action starts to recoil backwards like this, we have that initial dwell time where the round ball end of the toggle is moving from the front of its opening to the back. Once it hits the back, the bottom of the toggle leg has to stop, but this upper receiver is going to keep moving, and that forces the toggle to open like so. The bottom of the leg is stuck here, and as this pushes back, this pivot lifts up the toggle. That unlocks the system and allows the toggle to compress like so. Then, you get to this point, it has ejected the empty case, and we have the spring out here on the barrel that is now extended. It's going to run out of inertia, it's going to stop moving, and then the spring is going to pull the barrel forward. The barrel, of course, is screwed in right here to the receiver. As it pulls the receiver forward, again, the ball end of this toggle is stuck in its compartment, and so as the receiver goes forward, let's see if I can do that a little more slowly. It forces the toggle to close down like that, and then cycles all the rest of the way forward. It's now locked in place, new round is chambered, and it's ready to fire again. Now, looking at the mechanism under here, first off, this lever is the magazine release, and it just pulls back on that magazine catch. Pretty easy. The trigger here is connected to this bar that runs all the way forward to here. So when I pull the trigger, it's going to push this bar forward, which is going to lift off of that round sear and drop a firing pin and fire the action. There's a striker built into the bolt, which unfortunately you can't really see. There you go, you can see it right down there in the front of the bolt head. So it's a little striker and a firing pin down in there. Bommarito built in a safety mechanism here. There's an out-of-battery safety. Once the action starts reciprocating backwards, this trigger bar gets pushed down, which puts it out of connection. Doesn't look like it quite here, but that's what the mechanism is designed to do. It's now out of line with the sear, and if you pull the trigger, the trigger bar will go under the sear like that and not fire. So good basic safety mechanism there. While we're in here, I do want to point out the sights. The front sight on this is just a standard US 1917 Enfield sight, because that's the rifle front end that he bored out. The rear sight is a little notch cut into the toggle here, and what's interesting is that that is a lot bigger than the front sight. So when you get a sight picture on this thing, instead of the front sight post fitting in that notch, actually the entire front sight assembly fits in that notch. The front sight wings fit reasonably effectively side to side right inside that notch. So an interesting sight picture. I'm not sure how precise that would really be. Testing of the Bommarito did not go all that well. It had problems with extraction, and apparently it had problems where if it jammed partway open, it was really hard to mitigate, like to get the rifle the rest of the way out and extract a stuck case. That kind of makes sense. These little gripping nubby holes on the rear sight don't give you a lot of leverage to work with, and I'm sure you'd have to break out the tools to hammer the barrel in or pry the toggle open if it did jam partway through the cycle. So they did keep working on it at least through 1918. There are records that the government paid Bommarito $2,300 in April of 1918 and another $2,000 in September of 1918 for his work and development, continuing to attempt to improve the rifle's functioning. Ultimately, it didn't come to anything. Springfield even assigned one of its designers, a guy named Major Elder. I believe that was Edward Elder, who had actually been a designer for the Stevens Arm Company. And I'm a little hazy on this. There's not a lot of good records, but I believe he was basically temporarily assigned to Springfield Armory to help work on military rifle development during World War I, and got the sort of convenience rank of major on par with his assigned duties at the Armory. Anyway, he tried to improve on this. He was involved with several of the US experimental rifles during this period. He wasn't able to make it any more successful than Bommarito had, and ultimately it came to naught and ended up where it resides today in Springfield's Technical Reference Collection. So it's not a Luger rifle, but it is close. It'll have to be a stand-in for the time being. Hopefully you guys enjoyed the video. If you find yourself in Springfield, Massachusetts, definitely take some time to come visit the museum. They have a really cool exhibit of particularly American small arms, although a bunch of other stuff as well, from the beginning of the country all the way through basically the Vietnam War when Springfield was shut down. So check it out. Thanks for watching.